Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Frank Sondors. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Adi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Busy Monday morning. It's Memorial Day, and we decided to do it on this day, interestingly enough. But that's because I'm based in Europe. But yeah, good day. Quite sunny outside, and the sun is shining. So yeah, pretty pumped.
Fantastic. All right, good. So let me introduce you. Here's your bio. So Frank, you come with over a decade of experience in B2B sales, working for companies like Google, SimilarWeb, Blackrock, and Graph, whether as an individual contributor and all the way leading large sales teams. And right now you are building SalesForge AI to give companies the ability to blend their current sales efforts with AI agents to maximize pipeline and drive down costs. So in less than a year, they've scaled up from 0 to 3 million. Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So
right.
let's start with explaining what an AI agent is. You know, it's a word that's been thrown out there, and I heard different explanations, different definitions. Explain to the listeners what is an AI agent as relates to sales.
Yeah, good question. So yeah, and the reason why it's still quite a new term is because 99% of companies still have not used an AI agent within their business, and so yeah, it's a bit of like an internet moment. And what is an AI agent? So an AI agent is a fully autonomous, let's call it machine. You can think of this way. There's different ways how you can talk about AI agent, but imagine it's a machine, right? And a typical machine, there's a human that's driving it, right? So let's say a car, right? And in this particular case, an AI agent typically is where it is able to process, say, a piece of information and do something with it, right? In the most simplistic form. When it applies to sales, for example, what an AI agent can do is can have a full-on conversation with a prospect. It can actually send a unique email to a prospect in any language, whether it's English, French, etc. It can also send follow-up emails. It can engage via, say, LinkedIn, etc. And then if a prospect replies back, then the agent can have literally a conversation back and forth. And then typically I would say, any machine, so any AI agent should have a goal. So in our case, the goal is typically to book a meeting with a prospect. Unless you're a different type of companies where you don't want to have a meeting and maybe you want to just have a click out to happen to your website. So that's also possible. But ultimately, there's typically a goal that you're looking to achieve with an agent. So we have our own agent called Agent Frank. You can check it out, agentfrank.ai. And kind of receive an email for yourself and kind of have a look at it, see how it looks like. But there's also other agents, which are what I would describe not agents which are sort of off-the-shelf solutions. So Agent Frank is an off-the-shelf solution, so you can literally plug it in, and within sort of days, week, you can already see value from it.
So what does Agent Frank do?
So Agent Frank is, think of it like, so if somebody's familiar with terms like, SDR, so sales development reps, this essentially is an AI SDR. So essentially, it's a rep. It's essentially a part of your sales team, where you can essentially outline to the agent essentially what is the value proposition of your business, what is the pain you're solving for the customers, what's the customer actions, etc. What is the ICP of this product. And this value prop. And then what you can do is you can then, the agent, what it will do, it will source the leads, say, against your ideal customer profile. So ICP is the ideal customer profile. And then the way we do that is we have access to multiple databases in the world. So we would source the data against the ICP criteria, and then we would engage with every single lead by crafting a unique email. So the way that it's being done behind
so Agent Frank will actually craft a unique email.
Yeah. Unique email and very soon also a unique message on LinkedIn. So we're rolling out LinkedIn next month. So the way that it works is the unique messaging itself is we look at two very important data sets that typically you have in the world of sales. One is what is it that we're actually selling? So we're providing context to the agent, what is that we're selling? So what is the product or the service that you're selling? What is the pain you're solving for your customers? And gazillions of other things that we can feed to the agent. And we match this data set, what we call the seller data, with the buy data. So what do we know about that particular individual based on publicly available information that's available on the web? So whether that's website data, that's LinkedIn data, and other data sources that are available about that particular individual. So we stitch these two data sets together, then we apply AI on top of that, and this is what allows them to craft a unique email using potentially a particular framework in cold email and deliver that email. And not
What
just
framework do you use for the cold email?
so the customers can kind of set the various sort of settings inside. I mean, they can even justify these like little things within email. So for example, let's say you speak French, and instead of having the typical greeting, hi, hello, etc., to a person in France, you could literally say bonjour instead. So you can even task the agent to greet the individual in the native mother tongue, which triggers a response. So that's something that Agent Frank can do. So and there's gazillions of other settings that can be done, but essentially to optimize essentially agent for every single sort of scenario. It could be, you know, what do we want to do when it comes to multi-threading? Do we want to reach out to multiple people at the company or not? What do we want to do around the email length? Do we want to craft short emails or longer emails? So there's a bunch of different settings that customers has access to, including the tonality of the actual email. Should we write it a bit more formally or informal, or should be funny? Should we crack a joke within the email? So all these settings are available to choose from, because naturally every single industry is a bit different, right? So if I'm targeting salespeople, I would try and make it a lot more informal. But if you're targeting, say, lawyers, for example, then it will be a lot more formal, right? So that's why you have these different settings for the agent to operate, and then agent does his thing essentially. So we're big believers in not discounting generally humans. So yes, there is an agent that we operate, but we also are big believers in that actually you can increase significantly your sales results by combining humans and AI agents in one environment. That's exactly what we do. So we don't discount humans by any means.
So how do you do that? How do you combine the human with the agent?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. Let's say, so why would you even need to combine? So there's also, for example, legislative restrictions that exist in the world why you need to apply the human. So for example, you cannot use an AI agent to do cold calling. So any form of fully autonomous systems are banned in the US, for example, and in Europe. So that's where you will need to use a human to do cold calling and call prospects. Whereas you can do definitely calling on the inbound front. So meaning if the user signs up to your website, you can definitely leverage voice AI agents to call those prospects. This is actually something that we're rolling out ourselves this week, even though it's not our own solutions. It's something that we have assembled in a solution called NA10. So NA10 is like Make.com or Zapier, where essentially you can assemble custom agents as well. So that's something that we're doing because naturally our own agent yet doesn't offer that capability. So we typically are what we call agent first as a company. And this is what we also preach and tell everybody else to think about. When you have a problem in your business, think about implementing an agent within your company. Then think if the agent as an off-the-shelf solution doesn't exist, let's say like Agent Frank, then assemble it manually, essentially, we're using a custom workflow. And then the option 3, typically I always say hire an agency or freelancer. And then the last resort is actually hiring an employee into your business. This is how I typically think about, solving a problem in a company. And the reason why you're doing it in this particular way is because there's multiple reasons, but ultimately we are moving towards what we call the world of full-on efficiency, where you can generate a vast amount of revenue with very, very low headcount. So you definitely see leaner and meaner teams out there everywhere. But to do that, you need to blend agentic capabilities within your business, and you want to do that as early as you can. So we literally have one employee that's he's part-time, but essentially what he does on a weekly basis, he builds agents inside our business to make our business significantly leaner and meaner. So voice AI agents.
Absolutely. So let me ask you some questions on that, because I think it's a great approach. We are all about processes and process improvement. I learned very early in my career as an industrial engineer, working with software engineers, that you first of all have to identify the process and then you can build the software. The same thing applied to an AI agent, because for you to understand, for a business owner to understand how the AI agent will work, or for even a consultant that comes in and builds it, you have to understand what are the processes in the company. So in your opinion, what are the importance of actually having well-documented, well-defined processes? Would that make the process simpler in terms of automation?
So I'll give you an example. Let's say right now I also have an employee, very important employee. He's leaving the business. And naturally, I want to make sure I document all the bits of his work, right, and what he does and what's the process like, right? So, so yeah, that is more and more important as you progress, because naturally within the process, when you look at the process, this is where we also are trying to see what is it that we can where can we apply essentially agentic capabilities, right? So what is taking us a lot of time and so on and so forth. But so even though we don't have the documentation right now in place, and some of our customers also don't have that, we typically also ask generally, where do you spend most of your time on a weekly? Yes. So so when it comes to significantly larger companies, typically I would probably see that a lot more in like around 200 employees and so on and so forth. But essentially, the bigger the company, the bigger the need definitely to document everything that there is in your business in order to not just it's not just when your employee leaves, but just to understand how your whole engine runs.
I can tell you, it's all about consistency, right? Because the companies that we work with, for instance, it's anywhere from 10 employees all the way to 500,000. It really depends on the company, because as you said, the number of employees doesn't necessarily is an indication of the company, because we want to be lean. So if you help companies with AI agents and they become leaner, and you have maybe one person that can do the process as opposed to 10, the headcount doesn't really matter. What we discovered is that the companies get, like, they start at the beginning, like let's say they're at zero revenue, and they need to generate revenue. So that's definitely where they can use off the shelves solutions like yours, like agentfrank.ai, and they start generating leads and generating sales. At some point they get to a point where they have so many leads come in that they need to start organizing, and in order to organizing and maintain and staying lean, they do have to have well-documented processes. And then you can come on and go like, okay, well, let's identify the areas where you can actually use an agent to do that. So instead of 20 people doing it now, you can have one person doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is, I guess, when we're also targeting a lot of companies, we target companies with a lot of headcount just generally, right? So whether that's sales development or, for, I guess other solutions also target other bits of the companies, let's say finance, et cetera, right? So wherever there's a lot of headcount, that's where automation and better process, is something you definitely want to see as you progress. Because if you look at the companies in the US, a lot of them are significantly leaner and meaner, right? So they're implementing a lot more automations, a lot more agents within their companies in order to reduce headcount, right? So yeah, they're definitely very lean and very mean. But yeah, in order to implement any form of automation or agent, yes, you need to feed ultimately the context as to how does the process run. Yes, in this company. So I'll give you an example. I guess when we built our own voice agent across the inbound motion, so the agent needs to know what is essentially the sort of the modus operandi. How does it actually work, the process internally? If this happens, what to do, what is it that you should be doing next, and so on and so forth. So these are sort of the rail guards that you're giving to the agent to operate with, right? So yeah, documentation is definitely important, and whether we take it from this place or that place, we that's the context that we feed to the agent to operate around.
Right. And I think it's not only, it's not only documentation, it's also the optimization part, because you can have a process. Let's say you go and ask the person, like in a company, how do you do things? And they explain to you and you go like, why are you doing it? And they go, oh, this is the way it's always been done. And that's not the way you want to now take an agent and give them that process, because it's just not going to work, right? We want to make sure that it's optimized. And then we go, oh, this is an optimized process. Why won't we use now an agent in order to make sure that they actually do that?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, when you're implementing agentic systems internally, you would typically see, in a lot of cases, improvement in the process, because ultimately agents can work around the clock, right? So if it's, let's say, customer support or whatever the other function is, when you're implementing one of these systems, it does yield significant benefits, even though it does cost you to operate these agents, whether that's in LLMs or whatever the other systems that you need to put in place. But versus the alternative, which means labor doing the repetitive tasks, is definitely a very wise decision.
Absolutely. And the AI is not going to call sick, and it's not going to quit on you and all of that. Give me some examples of agents that you created that are specific, that are not generic. Like, what some tasks in sales that you were able to create agents for?
Good question. So let's say, let's start with something like super simple. Let's say a user books in a meeting with us right now on the site. So we get a ping, just generally in a Slack instance as to who the meeting has been booked. And then the agent goes and does all the research about that company, right, that we have a meeting with, and tries to figure out which of the products is best suited for that particular company potentially. So you can call that a research agent. So it does that research, and then there's an output that it provides to that rep, that's going to jump on the call. And also potentially next steps and other sort of different things that will be done. So essentially, it's the research that a lot of humans do on a daily basis in sales when they have to prep for the call, but the agent will do all that work for you, so that you can just look at the notes prior to the call. You can jump on the call, and you didn't have to spend 15, 30 minutes for that one particular call. And a lot of our reps, they do 5 to 10 calls on a daily basis. So there's a lot of calls that they need to sort of prep for, right, and have a kind of context towards that. So that's an example of a research agent, which applies not just in sales, but any meeting that you, I guess.
That's very usable. What's another agent? Give us an example of another function.
Yeah, so the other function, this is something outlined within Agent Frank, right? So where you can essentially compute an email. So how can you craft the most relevant email to that particular prospect? So this is where, again, we're looking at the context of what is it that we're selling, what is the pain that we're addressing, etc. And we're matching this sort of data set with what is it that we know about each and every individual when we're reaching out to them, right? So we would, go and gather all the data and all the context about that prospect. We would stitch these two data sets together, and then the agent has to figure out what's the best possible email computation, or like sort of email that we could sort of send out to that prospect.
I mean, those are great examples of agents that can be very usable, and I'm sure our listeners go, wow, if can have an agent that can do that, that'll be great. So definitely your services are very needed, and it's something that will help maximize the pipeline, maximize closes, and drive down costs, no doubt about it. So yeah. Frank, if people want to get a hold of you or know more about what you do, how can they do that?
They can just, go on LinkedIn. Probably LinkedIn is the easiest. Frank Sondors on there, the guy with the bacon emoji. Find out, kind of connect with me, follow, me. I share a lot of different things on agents and building sales pipeline. And then, anything that has to do with what we do, you can just go to salesforge.ai on the ecosystem page, and you kind of check out how is it that we can help.
And also Agent Frank.
Yeah. Agent Frank is on there, actually. So so agentfrank.ai. Yes, if you want to just look at the agent in particular, get an email from the agent, try and see how it will compute that email. It can literally do that within 10 seconds and deliver that email to you.
Fantastic. Well, Frank, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.